John's father has 3 sons. There's Jack, a quiet, intelligent student. Then there's Jason, a popular athlete. So who's the 3rd son? It's John. His father has 3 sons, Jack, Jason, and him, John. One day, a teacher decided to give her students a test, but all of them refused to take it. She could give detention for skipping the test to only one student. All of them knew each other's names. If a student knew they were going to get a detention, they agreed to take the test. How could the teacher make all the students participate? She told them that she'd give detention to the student whose name came first alphabetically. Then this person wouldn't skip the test. The next person on the list wouldn't skip as well, and so on until the end of the list. Randy was at home, sitting in his chair with a book. Suddenly, his sister's super expensive vase fell and broke in the living room. He ran there in time to see a stranger jump out of the window and run away. Randy tried to chase him, but his glasses fogged up because of the cold, so he couldn't see the person. When the police arrived, they immediately knew he was lying. He'd broken the vase himself. How did they know? Glasses don't fog up when you go from a warm room to the cold outdoors. It's the other way around. Michael Winston, who dislikes modern art, rushed into the city gallery and caused millions of dollars worth of damage to several paintings. Yet, the manager of the gallery thanked Mr. Winston for his actions. How come? Michael was a firefighter. The water from his hose damaged several masterpieces, but he still managed to extinguish the fire and save many more exhibits. Look at this line of people at the checkout in a supermarket. They're all a colorful bunch, but one of them is trying to sneak out food out of the store. Can you tell who just by looking at them closely? You might have thought it was the pregnant woman because of the fake tummy, but look! She's wearing comfy sneakers without shoelaces so that she could slip them on easily. The guy in a baggy hoodie sure looks suspicious, but it's not food he's hiding inside his pockets. It's a kitten. And the real culprit is the guy behind him. Look at his sleeves. One of his arms looks way bigger than the other. He must be hiding something in there. A man dressed in black from head to toe was walking in the middle of the road. All of a sudden, a huge black car with its headlights off came around the corner and screeched to a halt, not to hit him. How on earth did the driver of the car see the man in black? Well, the only reasonable answer would be that it was in broad daylight. Nobody said it was nighttime after all. 3 college friends met after a summer break and were sharing stories about their vacation. Lily described how she and her boyfriend had gone to Paris and seen the city from the top of the Eiffel Tower. Dylan told his friends that he had traveled to Africa with his parents. But on their last day, there was a massive volcanic eruption, and it didn't spoil their vacation only because they flew home that day. And Ellie said that she had visited her uncle in Texas and learned how to ride a horse. One of the stories was fake though. Which one? Dylan's story is fake. He couldn't fly home on the day of the eruption because when something like this happens, all flights get cancelled. Mark and Amy got stranded on a tiny uninhabited island full of sand and rocks, but not much else. They had no radio or cell phones, and there were no trees on the island to make a smoke signal. Suddenly, Amy noticed a plane circling the sky in search of them. She got a bright idea to make it notice them. Soon after, the plane picked them up. What was Amy's idea? She suggested using rocks to spell out SOS on the sand. Mike was studying for a big test in the school library. It was already late when he finished up and suddenly heard someone shouting for help. The voice was coming from behind a locked classroom door. Mike rushed there and opened it. Inside, there was his classmate, Brad. He told Mike that he'd gone to grab a bite in the cafeteria, only to find it was closed that day. Suddenly, he blacked out. And the next thing he knew, he was locked in the classroom. Mike promised to find out who had done this. By morning, Mike had 4 suspects in mind. When school started, he interrogated them. Matthew told him he'd been doing his homework in a classroom. Emily said that she'd been with Matthew, but later she'd gone home. Olivia claimed that she'd been having lunch in the cafeteria, and Chris explained that he'd been sick that day. It took Mike no time to figure out who was guilty. It was Olivia. She couldn't have been eating lunch in the cafeteria because it was closed that day. Clara was in her hotel room when she heard someone knock on the door. She looked through the peephole and saw an unfamiliar man. He said, "Hi, I'm the hotel manager. Sorry to bother you, but our database has crashed. Could you let me in to confirm some information?" Clara immediately rushed to her phone and called hotel security. Can you figure out why? The badge on the man's chest says Chloe Smith, and that's a female name. She knew the man was a fake manager. Emma's mother asked the girl to go to the supermarket and gave her a shopping list and a bank card. But in case Emma forgot the card's PIN, her mom also gave her a little clue. When Emma was already at the checkout, she took the clue out of her pocket and immediately recalled the code. Can you say what number it was if the clue was a sheet of paper with a fly, a cat, a girl, and a snake drawn on it? The PIN was 6420. Emma just had to count the number of legs of each creature. Littlefield was a tiny village where nothing ever happened. But one day, Mr. Richardson, a rich farmer, arrived at the police station in tears, saying that 2 of his best cows were missing. There were 3 suspects, and each of them had to answer one question. "Have you taken your neighbor's animals?" Mr. Anderson said that he and Mr. Richardson had a common business and that he wouldn't risk their partnership. Mrs. Martinez stated that she'd been living in this village since birth and she wouldn't spoil her reputation because of some animals. And Mr. Jones explained that his family had been breeding pigs for centuries, and he didn't have any reason to steal cows. The police officer figured out who the criminal was. Can you? The thief is Mr. Jones. How did he know that it was cows that were stolen? Nobody had told him the animal species. A woman was having breakfast at a nice restaurant. At one moment, she noticed a fly in her coffee. She was indignant and made the waiter bring her another cup. After he returned with a new cup of coffee, she shouted, "What's with this service in this place? You've just brought me the same cup of coffee." How did she understand it? She had already put sugar in her previous cup of coffee. When she tried the new one, it was sweet. There's a barrel of water in the yard. You look inside and see that it's more than half full, but your friend argues that it's less than half full. How to figure out who's right without using any measuring tools or removing water from the barrel? Tilt the barrel so that the water touches its rim. If you can see the bottom, the barrel's less than half full. If the bottom is still covered with water, it's more.
Sophie is an art student. She's painting something really curious. It's a greenhouse. But there's a white house inside the greenhouse, and a red house inside the white house. And there are lots of cubs inside the red house. Can you guess what exactly Sophie is painting? She's painting a watermelon. It has a small white layer inside the green one. Also, its pulp is red and full of seeds. Sophie is walking down the school hallway and meets her best friend Paul. There's a huge stain of red paint on his stomach. Sophie asks him, "Paul, what happened here?" Paul replies, "I was walking to the classroom, but suddenly some mad students sneaked up behind me and splattered paint all over my back. And then he just teleported like a superhero." Sophie says, "Stop fooling around," and leaves. Why? Alex has a stain on his stomach, not his back. Therefore, it's a fake story. Sophie and her classmates are drawing a still life, but one of the students is an imposter. Can you guess who? This guy's work is nothing like what others are drawing, but it's not a crime. But this lady over here has a police badge in her pocket, which means she's probably working undercover. Sophie enters an auditorium. 3 of her 3 classmates are very busy. Julia is standing on a ladder and hanging pictures. Paul is carving a sculpture from marble. And Nina is filming Paul. Which one is in greater danger? Nina, the sculpture is cracked and it's about to fall on her. Sophie and Paul are making an experiment after classes. Both guys bring identical buckets with the same amount of water. But the temperature of Sophie's water is 25 degrees C, and the temperature of Paul's water is 25 degrees F. Simultaneously, they drop a coin into each bucket from the same height. The coins hit the water at exactly the same time. Can you guess which coin should touch the bottom first? The coin in Sophie's bucket. At 25 degrees C, water is liquid, while at 25 degrees F, it turns into ice. Sophie is walking down the pier. She spots a cute boat and decides to paint it. She asks the 2 guys standing nearby, "Who's the owner of this boat? Can I paint it?" Both guys like Sophie and want to impress her. So they both shout, "This is my boat. Can you help Sophie figure out the real owner?" There's a blue jacket on the chair in the boat that matches the pants of the guy on the left. So, he's the owner. Sophie has painted a beautiful picture, and the boat owner wants to buy it. He gives her a box with gemstones. All but 2 are blue, all but 2 are green, and all but 2 are red. How many gemstones are in the box? He gave Sophie a total of 3 gemstones, 1 blue, 1 green, and 1 red. Sophie visits Paul's house, and he offers her an apple that seems very delicious. She can't resist, but after taking a bite, Sophie finds a worm in the apple. Paul apologizes, but Sophie says, "Don't worry, it could be even worse." Can you guess what could be worse? Sophie could have found a half of worm. The next morning, Sophie enters the classroom. She sees Nina claiming that she had painted this portrait. Sophie gets furious and says, "You're a liar! It's my work!" Can you spot the real author? Nina signed this work in the right upper corner, But take a closer look at the lower left corner. We can still see the name Sophie under a layer of fresh paint. Therefore, Sophie painted this portrait. Sophie brings some of her recent works to an art gallery hoping to sell them. The dealer says, "Sorry, but we only sell antique drawings. They should be at least 300 years old." Sophie says, "Liar," and leaves. Can you guess why? Take a look at this painting. This elegant medieval lady has a sports car parked in her backyard. Sophie's brother Mike lives in the country with his wife. Sophie wants to visit them next weekend, but this week, Mike's wife is feeling very sick. Mike calls Sophie and says, "Sorry, we can't host you. My wife is sick. She might have appendicitis." Sophie replies, "This can't be true. I took your wife to the hospital 2 years ago myself, and she had her appendix removed." When diagnosed, Mike's wife was found to have appendicitis. Can you explain this mystery? It's possible because Mike had remarried and forgot to tell Sophie. Sophie is heading to the classroom and finds her art teacher, Mr. Wolf, unconscious on the floor. She takes him to the hospital. According to doctors, he has a severe allergic reaction. But Mr. Wolf insists that he hadn't eaten anything all day. Sophie interrogates everyone who was around Mr. Wolf that day. The cleaning lady says, "I wash the class in the morning. I only use organic and allergy-friendly products." Nina says, "I was painting vases in the classroom all day. Mr. Wolf was there too, but I didn't see him eating any food." And Paul says, "I saw Mr. Wolf in the library early in the morning. He was looking perfectly fine." Can you guess who caused Mr. Wolf's allergy? The cleaning lady. Although she used allergy-friendly products, she put the pencils in a jar with paint remover while cleaning his desk. Later that day, Mr. Wolf took one of these toxic pencils, chewed it, and got sick. Sophie returns back to the art school to prepare an exhibition. She's standing at the center of a ladder, preparing to hang a poster on the wall. She climbs up 6 steps, but suddenly the ladder begins to stagger, forcing her to come down 10 steps. Sophie asks Paul to hold the ladder and climbs 18 steps to the very top. Can you count the total number of steps on this ladder? Let's say that the middle step number is x. From the middle step, Sophie goes up 6 steps, which is x plus 6. Then she goes down 10 steps, and she's now at x minus 4. After that, Sophie goes up 18 steps, so she's now at x plus 14, or at the very top of the ladder. 14 steps from the top, plus 14 steps from the bottom, plus the middle step, and we get 29 steps. The art exhibition is going well. Hundreds of people came over to see it. Suddenly, someone cuts the power for a moment, and when it's back again, Sophie sees that the most expensive sculpture is missing. Can you help her find the thief? This elegant lady on the left. Her bag is looking full now, and it's hanging on the opposite shoulder. 3 art dealers approach Sophie during the exhibition to offer collaboration. Isabella shows her a picture of a beautiful villa on her phone and says, "Young lady, you must come to my art residence in Italy this summer. I'm ready to cover all your expenses." Sebastian says, "Darling, I'd love to buy 2 of your paintings for my private collection. Do you accept checks?" And Tina says, "I have a new book coming out this fall. Would you like to draw illustrations?" Only one of these deals is not fake. Can you help Sophie figure out which one? There are Hollywood hills in the background of this villa, so it's definitely not in Italy. Therefore, Isabella is a liar. Sebastian acts like he's wealthy, but at the same time, he's trying to steal Tina's phone, so he's probably a scammer. Therefore, Sophie should accept Tina's offer. Sophie gets her first salary and goes to the jewelry shop to treat herself. The shop owner, Maya, complains, "There were several thefts in my shop this week." Sophie offers to help find the thief. First of all, she watches security camera videos. Very soon, she spots who was stealing the jewelry. Can you see him? Or her too? This lady is hiding the jewelry in her umbrella.
Betty has a sister, Amy. Gail is Betty's mother. Meanwhile, Dan is Gail's father and Samantha is Dan's mother. Can you figure out how Amy is related to Dan? Here's why. Amy is Betty's sister, and Betty is the daughter of Gail. Therefore, Amy is another daughter of Gail. We also know that Dan is Gail's father. Therefore, Dan is Amy's grandfather. Betty is going on a date, and she's a little late. Her boyfriend, Stan, is already waiting for her inside their favorite coffee shop. Can you find him? It's this guy on the right. He has a small gift box on the table. After the date, Betty takes a car sharing to go home. The car is parked at this point. Can you figure out the only point Betty can reach? If Betty takes this weird route, she can only reach point 3. One of the most popular mailing websites is facing a system error. That's why the passwords of some clients are changed. Betty writes a message to the company's representative. "My password is altered. I'm not able to log in." The company replies, "This time, your password is distinct and it has 8 letters, out of which 2 are the same as in your previous password." Betty replies, "Thanks, now I can log in." Can you figure out Betty's old and new passwords? Her new password is distinct, and the old one is altered. Betty arrives at her favorite swimming pool and spots something really weird. Can you see it too? Someone swapped these guys' shadows. After swimming training, Betty goes to the public shower. There are other people in shower cubicles nearby. Can you spot who's unwanted here? This person on the left should probably use the men's bathroom. He has only one shampoo bottle, while ladies usually bring a bunch of skincare products. Betty meets her best friend Rob. He always tells the truth. Rob says, "I have one specific whole number on my mind. It's 1, 2, or 3. You can ask me just one question, but I can only reply yes or no, or I don't know. What question will you ask to figure out the number I'm thinking about?" Can you help Betty? She should say, "I have one whole number on my mind. It's between 2 and 3. Is the number I'm thinking of smaller or equal to your number?" This way, if Rob replies no, then the number is 1. If he replies yes, the number is 3. And if he replies "I don't know," the number is 2. Betty got a job as a cashier at a movie theater. A group of her first customers approached the ticket kiosk. 4 mothers, 2 grandmothers, and 4 daughters. What's the minimum number of tickets they need to buy? Only 6. Betty has 3 keys that open 3 different doors. How many attempts does she need to figure out the key for each door? Betty will need 6 attempts. First, she has to check the first key and spend 3 attempts for 3 doors. Then, check the second key, 2 attempts for the remaining 2 doors. And then, use the third key to open the last door. Betty enters the cafeteria and spots a thief right away. Can you see this person too? This elegant lady in the chair has a plastic detector attached to the stolen clothes. Someone robbed the movie theater. Betty calls the police and they arrest 3 suspects. Officers check the guy's passports. Can you spot a fake ID? Most passport pictures have a white background, so the one in the middle is fake. Late at night, Betty is walking home in a snowstorm. She meets her neighbor walking a dog in the street and freaks out. Can you guess why? The dog leaves footprints from only 2 paws. Betty continues her walk and sees another odd thing. Can you spot it too? It should be the moon, not Saturn. Betty enters her apartment building and meets 3 neighbors in the elevator. One of them is a werewolf. Can you guess who? This lady on the left. She's wearing a moon necklace. Betty goes to sleep and wakes up in an arena. The speakers announce that she must fight with one of these 3 hybrid creatures. Which one should she choose to stay alive? A polar bear with a head of a tiger, an elephant with a wolf head, or a hybrid with a face and body of a huge squid and the legs of a human? Betty should choose the third hybrid. Since its body has gills, it won't be able to breathe and fight outside water. After the fight, Betty gets an invitation to meet the major investor of this competition, King Harold. She enters a big, beautiful hall and sees 6 people sitting in front of her. They're wearing the same outfit and look very similar. It's very hard to tell who's the real king here. But after a couple of minutes, Betty approaches one of them, bows, and says, "Nice to meet you, Your Majesty." How did she know who's the real king? All the other guys were looking at the king very attentively to imitate his manners and actions. Meanwhile, the real King Harold was sitting calmly. Betty returns home and faces bad news. Her cat Fluffy is missing. Betty questions her neighbors. Lily says, "Sorry, I didn't see any cats. I'm working from home. I spent all day working on my new book." Vanessa said, "I haven't seen Fluffy today, and it's cool because I have a terrible allergy to cats." And Bob said, "I think I heard a cat meowing on the balcony a couple of hours ago." Can you guess who stole the cat? Nobody. Fluffy's been hiding under Betty's couch all this time. Betty's boyfriend Stan lives just a couple of blocks away from her place. Betty calls him on FaceTime and invites him over. But Stan says, "Sorry, honey, I've just got home feeling very sick. I'd rather go to bed early." Betty yelled, "Liar!" and hung up. Why? Take a look at Betty's window. It's pretty dark. Stan lives only 2 blocks away, but there's a bright blue sky in his background, which means he's definitely not at home. Betty makes a beautiful sandcastle and then lies down. She falls asleep. In a while, Betty wakes up and sees that someone has ruined her castle. She asks 3 persons hanging out nearby, "Who did it?" Kelly replies, "I like your castle and took a couple of pictures for my social. Then I left to get some ice cream. When I came back, I saw the castle was completely ruined." Olivia said, "I'm sorry, I was swimming far from the shore. When I returned to the shore, I didn't notice any castles." And Tom said, "Sorry, lady, I don't see anything because I'm blind. The wind must have destroyed your castle. You shouldn't have to make it 5 stories high." Can you spot a liar? Tom is lying. He said he was blind. How did he learn the castle architecture in detail? Betty is using an app to find accommodation for her vacation. She likes 3 offers. Rose invites her to stay in a cozy bedroom on the 4th floor of her luxurious villa for the price of $50 per night. Jane is ready to host 1 person in a tiny guest house in her backyard for $30. And Tyler offers to rent his boat for $200 per night. Fishing equipment is included. Only one of these advertisements isn't fake. Can you guess which one? This villa is 3 stories, and Tyler's picture is hanging on the pier. He's a runaway thief. So, Jane's guest house is the safest option for Betty. Susan found out that her favorite pop band was playing a private concert for VIP clients in a luxurious club. She decided to sneak inside through the back door. But, unfortunately, Susan came across a strict guard behind the door. He refused to let Susan inside without a password. But, luckily for her, there was a hint on the guard's t-shirt. The hint was to infinity plus BD. Susan deciphered the hint and was allowed to enter. Can you guess what the password was? It was to infinity and beyond. After the concert, Susan met up with her friend Bobby. Bobby was an expert in ghost activity. He invited Susan to go ghost hunting to a creepy old hotel. Of course, Bobby had state-of-the-art equipment. Once they arrived at the hotel, his equipment indicated there was strong paranormal activity going on. It looked like the ghost had a sense of humor and wanted to play hide-and-seek with them before it revealed itself. It led Bobby and Susan into a room with 4 doors. Each door had an inscription on it with some clues. The sign on door A said, "It's behind B or C." The sign on door B claimed, "It's behind A or D." Door C said, "It's in here." And door D stated, "The ghost isn't here." Bobby and Susan looked very confused until a note appeared next to their feet. It said, 3 of the inscriptions are false and 1 is true. Can you guess which door leads to the ghost? Let's see how this works. If the ghost was behind door A, then both statements B and D would be true. If it was behind door B, then both A and D would be true. If the ghost was behind door C, then A, C, and D would be all true. But if the ghost was behind door D, then the statements on all the doors would be false, except for that on door B. This fits the rules, so the ghost must be behind door D. The next morning, Bobby called Susan again, saying that he had a surprise. He had won 2 tickets to Susan's favorite theme park and asked her if she wanted to go. Before she answered, though, Bobby warned her that she had to crack a very difficult riddle. Only then would he give her a ticket. She agreed. For a school challenge, 100 students received a number between 1 and 100. Each student was instructed to go inside a classroom that had exactly 100 boxes randomly numbered from 1 to 100. Inside each box, there was a slip of paper with a random number between 1 and 100 on it. Now, each student needed to enter the classroom on their own and find the box that contained the slip of paper with their number on it. But in order to do so, each of them was only allowed to open a maximum of 50 boxes. They were instructed to leave the room exactly as they found it, and they weren't allowed to communicate with other students once they'd left the room. If all of the students managed to find their numbers inside the boxes, they would each get $100. But if one of them wasn't able to find their number, none of them would be able to win the prize. Bobby asked Susan if she knew the best strategy for all of the students to find their numbers and win the prize. After a few hours, Susan called Bobby with the answer. She managed to figure out the riddle. Can you guess what she answered? This riddle isn't obvious, but let's see how it works. If each student searched for their numbers randomly, they would each have a 50% chance of finding the box with their number inside. This is because there were 100 boxes and they were allowed to look inside 50 of them. However, the probability of all of them finding their own number following this random strategy is absurdly small. So, to increase their chances of collectively finding their numbers, they would need a better approach. The students could use something called the loop strategy. After entering the classroom, they should go directly toward the box that has their number on top of it. The number inside probably won't be their number, but that's okay. They should check the number inside the box and go look for the box with that same number on top of it, and so on and so forth. They should keep doing this until they find the paper with their number on it. This strategy means there's more than a 30% chance of the students finding their numbers and winning the prize. It's not a huge probability, but hey, at least they'll have fun trying to figure it out. One afternoon, Susan found her father, Frank, in the living room. Frank was a private investigator and he had just received a message revealing the address of the town's most dangerous criminal, Dirty Jack. He decided to go check the area, even though he didn't know what the criminal looked like. The address turned out to be an old warehouse. When he busted inside, he found 4 people sitting at a table. They were a carpenter, a truck driver, a mechanic, and a firefighter. Without any hesitation, Frank arrested the firefighter. How did he know it was the criminal? The firefighter was the only man in the room. The rest of the people were women. Bobby and Susan decided to go grab a cup of coffee. But when their orders arrived, Bobby's drink came with a fly in it. He called the waiter and asked him to change his cup. The waiter brought him another cup of coffee, but 2 seconds later, Bobby called the waiter again and said, "Hey, that's the same cup." How did he know? Because Bobby had already put sugar in his coffee. And when he tasted the new drink, it already had sugar in it. Susan and her family went on vacation to their country house, but unfortunately, it was raining heavily. It kept raining for 13 days. When it rained in the morning, the afternoon was beautiful and clear. And when it rained in the afternoon, the next day was blessed with a clear, sunny morning. Overall, Susan's family experienced 11 nice mornings and 12 nice afternoons. Can you find out the total number of days they spent in the country house? The total number is 18 days. Here's how you can figure it out. Let's call clear afternoons X, clear mornings Y, and periods of time with no rain O. This equation represents the number of days with rain, X plus Y equals 13. And here are the days with clear mornings, Y plus O equals 11. And this equation represents the days with clear afternoons, X plus O equals 12. If we solve these 3 equations, we'll learn that X equals 7, Y equals 6, and O equals 5. So the total number of days is 18. Bobby started his morning by jogging in the park near his house. When he returned, he got to know some very unpleasant news. Someone had stolen his car. He questioned 3 of his neighbors. Henry said, "I've been playing video games for the past 12 hours and haven't left my basement." Rosie said, "I'm a gardener. I've been planting daisies in the public area all morning, and I think I saw a suspicious man who opened the car using a knife." Jack said, "I saw your car when I went out for groceries, but when I returned home, it was gone." Who's lying? Rosie. She said she planted daisies, but look, there are only rose bushes in this area. One day, Susan found a box on her desk with a note that read, "What can run but never walks, has a mouth but never speaks, has a head but never weeps, has a bed but never sleeps." Can you decipher this riddle? The correct answer is a river.
Regina and Claire went to a shopping mall on the weekend to buy some clothes. Regina saw an escalator going down with a big banner that said "Huge sale! Everything 99% off." Of course, they hurried there. Who wouldn't? But as soon as they headed there, everything faded out. The mall and the part of the escalator behind them vanished. It got all dark, and they had no other option but to go where the escalator would take them. They arrived at a place where they couldn't see anything. Regina yelled for help. Suddenly, 3 signs appeared in front of them. The first one said, "This leads to a sea filled with flesh-eating mutant sharks." The second went, "This leads to a forest with brain-sucking zombie mosquitoes." And the third one said, "This leads to a cave covered with sharp rocks and bats with giant claws." Which one should they choose? Well, bats are harmless until provoked, whether they have small or big claws. So they should choose the third one. And as for the sharp rocks, they just need to watch their steps. They started walking in the direction of the cave when suddenly a peculiar tiny monster cut their way. "Welcome to the underworld, home of all monsters. We hope you enjoy your stay. Even if you don't, you can't ever leave here anyway." And it vanished out of sight. That's when a scary-looking city started to appear around them. "What does it mean that we can't leave?" Claire asked. "There must be someone who can help us," Regina replied. "Psst, over here," a creepy monster said from the corner of the street. "Crack my riddle and I'll tell you who can help you. What goes around the house and into the house without ever touching the house?" It's the sun. So, if you want to see it again, go to the restaurant called Cantina Hella and find the only human there. He might help you. And the monster left. Regina and Claire found it, but a bodyguard stopped them at the entrance. "Password?" "We don't have it," Regina said. The bodyguard handed them a piece of paper with these numbers on it. The number that comes next is the password. Can you figure it out? Every next number is made by moving the first digit of the previous one to the end. So the password is 1793. Regina and Claire walked in. The place was super crowded with human-looking monsters everywhere. It seemed impossible to spot the only real human in there. Can you see him? Well, the others may look human, but if you take a closer look, you can see their tails, fangs, horns, and all that. But this guy here doesn't have any of that. So he must be who they're looking for. Regina and Claire approached the man. His name was Eddie. They told him all about what they'd been through. He said, "I know how you can get back. I do travel to Earth and back here all the time. I'll help you. Meet me here in an hour." Then he gave them his card and left. On it, there was strange writing. Can you decipher it? You need to replace all the letters with the previous letter that comes before them in the alphabet. So, it says police station. Regina and Claire got hungry, so they decided to order something to eat. The waiter brought them 3 different desserts. Which one should they choose? Did you notice that the eyes on the first one are actually blinking? I wouldn't eat that. And the teeth inside the second one are real. Well, that's creepy. But the worms inside the third one are just gummy worms. And what looks like dirt is actually chocolate crumble. So they should definitely eat this one. After eating, they headed to the police station to find Eddie. When they arrived, they saw Eddie was really panicked. "I'm a monster hunter, like a detective of the underworld, and I caught this extremely dangerous monster called Winona. But she escaped from her prison cell. I don't know how." But Claire immediately figured out how she escaped. Can you? Look at the poster on the wall. It's moving slightly. There must be an airflow behind it that is coming from a tunnel. Suddenly, a guardian rushed next to them and said, "Sir, someone claimed they spotted Winona at the gym." Everyone rushed there. The receptionist silently pointed them in the direction of the changing cabins. They saw the feet of 3 different monsters in 3 different changing rooms. One of them was Winona. Can you tell which one? Do you remember what the other prisoners were all wearing? The monster in the third cabin is wearing the same thing, so she must be Winona. Eddie kicked the door of the third cabin, and there she was. Yet Winona looked extremely calm for a monster who was about to go back to jail.
"Not so fast,"
she said, and created 4 clones of herself. Now there were 5 Winonas in front of them.
"I will give you a hint about who the real me is and let you take me back to jail only if you agree to place me in the most luxurious cell."
All the Winonas said at the same time. Eddie had no choice but to accept. The first and fourth clones said that number 5 was the real Winona. The second and the third clones said that number 1 was the real Winona. And the fifth clone said that number 2 was the real Winona. Only one of these statements was true, and the other 4 were lies. So, can you tell which clone is actually the real one? If only one of them told the truth, then neither the first nor the fifth clone could be the real Winona, since that would mean 2 clones told the truth. Nor could the real Winona be the third or the fourth clone, since that would mean no one told the truth. So the only way one of them told the truth is if the second clone is the real Winona. After Eddie placed Winona in her new luxury cell, it was time to help Regina and Claire get back home. He took them to a place called the Hound Tattoo Studio and explained that the only way they could go back home was to get a key-shaped tattoo, which would open a portal to Earth. The tattoo artist showed them his key symbols catalog and said each different key shape opened a portal to another land, and they needed to pick the one that would open a portal to Earth. Because if they can't, nobody knows where they travel. Can you help them? Remember, Eddie told them that he travels to the Earth all the time. Then he must have the Earth portal key tattoo as well. Now, let's take a closer look at all his tattoos. Here is the key-shaped one, and this key on the catalog is the same. So it must be the one that will help them go back home. After their tattoos were complete, Eddie activated their magic to send them home. Regina and Claire felt dizzy, as if falling through a rabbit hole. Then, suddenly, they woke up in their bedrooms at home. Wait, none of that was real? How do you think they can tell if this was all a dream or not? Simple. They should just check if they really have tattoos now. Yup, there they are. They definitely didn't have them when they were at the mall. Well, that was weird.